Dishonest misappropriation of property under section number 314 to 315. Whoever dishonestly misappropriates or converts to his own use any movable property shall be punished with an imprisonment for a term not less than 6 months or may extend to 2 years or fine or with both. So, what are they referring to over here? They're simply referring to whoever dishonestly, that means here itself we see an element of mens rea to be proved. Misappropriates means takes it for themselves and uses it for themselves. Misappropriates or converts to his own use any movable property. So if any person dishonestly takes a property that does not belong to him and converts it for his own use relating to movable property, then they will attract the provision under this dishonest misappropriation of property. Now, what is the difference between dishonest misappropriation of property and theft? Because even theft involves movable property wherein a person is dishonestly taking an item out of the possession of the owner. Over here, the difference is that there is no requirement to physically take that movable property and move it somewhere. Here they are simply saying if they convert it to their own use or if they misappropriate it in such a way for their own use. Okay, so let's look at explanation 1. It says that if this dishonest misappropriation is only for a short period of time, is still a misappropriation of this property. Now let's look at an example for this. Let's say that Harish has 2 lakhs in hand. Okay, Harish asks Arun to hold the 2 lakh rupees until he gets back from his native. Now this is only for a period of 2 days. Now at this point what Harish does is he takes this, what Arun does is since he has this 2 lakh rupees, he thinks that okay, why not let me use this 2 lakh rupees for my purpose. Anyways, I have to give it back only after 2 days. So if Arun ends up using that money for the 2 days and then returns it after that 2 days, it still amounts to a dishonest misappropriation. Now we can even substitute the example for maybe jewelry. Arisha has a diamond necklace with her. Anisha knows that she has this diamond necklace and also knows that Arisha is not going to be in the city for over the next 1 week. So what Anisha does is she goes to Arisha's room, takes the diamond necklace and wears it for an event. She comes back and leaves the diamond necklace back in place. She used it only for a time being. She used it only for the purpose of that event. It still amounts to a dishonest misappropriation of property. Second explanation. I will call this explanation as the finder of lost goods. Now, if a person has found any property which does not belong to him and he has when he finds this property, there is a requirement for this person to take all necessary effort to find the actual owners of the property. So for that purpose, if this person takes that item and keeps it in his safe possession, then there is no misappropriation of property. Again, I'm repeating myself. If a person finds something on the road or maybe on the floor and he takes that possession and he keeps it with him for the purpose of finding out who the real owner of that property is. If he does so, then he will not attract the provisions of the section. But there is an offense if he finds that thing and takes no effort to find the owner whatsoever. or if he takes a very minimal effort to find the owner, then we can say that he has criminally misappropriated this property. Please understand that as long as there's a dishonest intention only, we can say that this section is being attracted. Now, what if I find a diamond necklace on the when I'm walking on the corridor? Now, if I take it and keep it in my possession, I have to take all reasonable effort, which means that I cannot just simply go and ask the person walking on the corridor nearby me, hey, do you know if any person owns a diamond necklace? That becomes a very vague sentence. That person will probably ignore me and walk away. What I should do is I should probably try to find the management, take out pictures of it, circulate it wherever necessary, and inform the people that I am in possession of the same and they can come and collect it for the purpose of returning these goods. This is what we mean by using reasonable means to discover the owner of the property. So this is only your provisions with respect to dishonest misappropriation of property. The next one is your criminal breach of trust. In criminal breach of trust, first and foremost, there is a trust. Not the forming of a trust like we know or we have studied in Companies Act, but rather a simple trust between friends. Because I will probably trust my friend, I can probably trust a stranger. That is the form of trust that we're talking about over here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to trust a random stranger. There will only be persons who are in close capacity to me who I will trust, who I will entrust something with. It can be my friend, it can be my family members. To a personal circle, only friends and family members. But then if it has to be in an official capacity, then I can say that trustees for a trust set up under the Trusts Act, directors of a company, these are all persons who have a fiduciary relationship with the entity. Now, if these people are being entrusted with some property, that is, the accused is entrusted with the property or dominion over it, he must use that property. This director, trustee, friend, etc. must be actually using that property. While using that property, he must dishonestly use or dispose of that property in violation of any direction of law or any legal contract. Let's break this down again. If there is a direction of law, then we can say it applies to a trustee or a director if he has been entrusted with that property, or a legal contract. A legal contract can be any form of a contract wherein I go and trust a person to keep my goods with him and the promise of returning it after 2 weeks' time. But then that person does not do so and he makes a sale of my goods within that 2 weeks' time. So whatever it is, whether it is a legal obligation or whether it was through a legal contract, if a person was entrusted with a property and he used that property, while using that property, he has disposed of that property in violation of any law or a legal contract. Now, explanation 1 and 2 of criminal breach of trust go on to say that if an employer under the EPF, Employee Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, deducts the employee's contribution from the wages, so from the salary of the person, the employee is deducting the EPF amount, okay, shall be deemed to be entrusted with the amount so contributed by him. So in this case, if the employer does not deposit that amount of EPF into the provident fund, then we can say that even he is committing a criminal breach of trust in the present scenario. Now, the same thing applies even with the Employee State Insurance Act. If the employee deducts the contribution of wages payable to the employee for the credit of the Employee State Insurance Fund, then he shall be deemed to be entrusted with the amount so deducted. So if you see criminal breach of trust, there is an element of trust involved which is being breached in violation of law or in violation of any contract. The deduction of your EPF as well as ESI and not crediting it to to the EPF accounts or the state insurance accounts is also considered to be a criminal breach of trust. Let's look at some case laws over here. In the case of SK Alag versus State of UP and others, the demand drafts were drawn in the name of the company for supply of goods, and neither the goods were sent by the company nor was the money returned. So DDs were taken out for the supply of goods. Goods didn't get sent, but the money was also not returned. The managing director cannot be said to have committed the offence under this section. In the absence of any provision laid down in the statute, a director of a company or an employee cannot be held vicariously liable for any offence committed by the company itself. So please understand that not every action of the director is in violation of breach of trust. There are some very specific cases wherein the director is entrusted with the property of the company. In such a scenario, it was not considered to be a criminal breach of trust, but rather the directors cannot be held vicariously liable for the company. In Onkar Nath Mishra versus State, the Supreme Court held that the commission of an offence of a criminal breach of trust has two parts which are involved. The first is there must be an obligation which is created, and the second one is there is a misappropriation or dealing with that property dishonestly. So yes, an obligation is created over which property is handed over, or the dominion of that property is handed over to the accused. After that only they can go ahead and misappropriate or deal with that property. Receiving stolen property, section number 317. They are saying that whoever receives stolen property or retains any stolen property knowing that it is stolen will attract an imprisonment of 3 years or fine or with both. Now, if they are receiving stolen property which he knows has been committed as a result of dacoity or have belonged to a gang of dacoits, then the punishment is much higher. Imprisonment for life, rigorous imprisonment which may extend up to 10 years plus fine. Now, if any person is habitually receiving stolen property, again imprisonment for life and term which may extend to 10 years plus fine. And whoever voluntarily assists in the concealment or disposing of property, then they will also be imprisoned for a period of 3 years and may be liable to fine. So what are we seeing? We're seeing 4 situations here. Whoever dishonestly retains or receives stolen property. Whoever receives stolen property knowing it belongs to dacoits or as a result of commission of dacoity. Habitual stealers, persons who are habitually stealing all the time, or any person who voluntarily assists or conceals in the disposing of such property. The next offence we're looking at is the offence of cheating. Cheating, as we all already know, is some kind of a deception. That means I am falsely telling you about something, but simply falsely telling someone something is of no use unless you get them to do some activity. So the act of cheating is to convey a message to the person and make them believe that it's something else, and as a result of that they will give me property or do something which they would not reasonably have done. So the word cheating itself, the first main criteria is there must be a deception of that person. Now, based on that deception of that person, I am inducing that person to deliver property to me or retain any property that he would not have delivered, or inducing that person to do something that he would not do if he was not deceived, or cause any act which is likely to cause damage or harm to the body, mind, reputation of that person or that property. So there is deception. Using deception, I'm getting that person to do something or not do something, or do any activity which he would not do if he was not so deceived. In the case of Iridium India Telecom versus Motorola Incorporated, the court held that the deception is the most important part in the deception is the most necessary ingredient under this section. Complainant must prove that the inducement was caused by deception, and they even held that non-disclosure of relevant information is also to be treated as deception. So if I have a duty to inform certain information to you, then that misrepresentation or the simple fact that I did not tell you that fact amounts to misrepresentation. Negligence in duty without any dishonest intention cannot amount to cheating. A bank employee, while on comparison of signatures of drawer, passes a check, may be negligence resulting in loss of bank, but it does not amount to cheating. That means when the banker checked for the signature, he believed that it could possibly be the same. But over here it is a mere case of negligence if he passes it, and it does not amount to cheating. In Kurian Chako versus State of Kerala, a money circulation scheme was allegedly a mathematical impossibility, and the promoters knew full well that the scheme was not workable. But they made false representations to persons to induce persons to part with their money. The court held that it could be assumed and presumed that the accused had committed the offence of cheating. In Mohammed Ibrahim versus State of Another, the court held that the execution of false deeds, sale deeds, and a complaint was filed by the real owner of the property. The accused had a bona fide belief that the property belonged to him, and the purchaser also believed that the suit property belonged to the accused. It was held that the accused cannot be held guilty of cheating, as the ingredients of cheating are not present. What are they referring to over here? They are saying that A was in the process of selling property to C, but turns out that the A himself believed that he was the owner of the property. The actual owner of the property over here in this case was B, who filed a complaint. Now at this point, please understand there must be a dishonest intention, which in this case was not there, and therefore the elements of cheating are not present. Punishment for cheating is 3 years or fine or both. Cheating by personation, that is, if a person is pretending to be someone else, then the punishment for that will change. So cheating by personation refers to showing yourself off to be someone who you really are not. So if I walk into a room and I say that I am a collector, or I am the let's say I am an officer of the Indian police force, that amounts to cheating by personation. The next 4 sections that we are going to be looking at is section number 320, 321, 322 and 323. Section number 320 and 321 are talking about those provisions which prevent when a person is fraudulently concealing property or debt not being available to the creditors. So section 320 refers to concealment of property to prevent it from being distributed amongst creditors, in the sense that if someone fraudulently or dishonestly removes, conceals or delivers to any person without adequate consideration to prevent the distribution of property amongst the creditors. Let's say that A has a loan from B, and for this purpose A pledged his property to B. Now actually let's not use the word pledged. Let's say that this was an unsecured loan. The only reason that B gave this money to A was because B is aware that A holds some kind of a property. Now, at the time that A has to repay the loan to B, what A does is A ends up selling his property for less value. Okay, if he is selling it for less value, he will mostly end up giving it to his family members, or he may gift it off to his family members. That is only what we call as without adequate consideration. That means he is simply trying to dispose of the property such that B can never recover the same from him. The punishment for this is minimum of 6 months but may extend up to 2 years or fine or both. In section number 321, they are saying that the same concept, but they are preventing debt from being available to the creditors. Whoever fraudulent or dishonestly prevents any debt or demand which is due to him from being available to payment of creditors is punishable with an imprisonment of 2 years or fine or both. Now let's say for example that A purchases goods on credit from B, and B also purchases on credit from A. Okay, let's say D. Now, since this is a credit industry, each one is taking credit from each other. So it stands to state that only if A makes a payment to B, can B make a payment to D. Now, what B is telling A is that don't give me any money in my account, because then that money will end up going to D. It will end up going to him when he is recovering the money. So what is B essentially doing over here? He is preventing the debt to come to him so that it can go back to D. Dishonest or fraudulent execution of deed of transfer containing a false statement of consideration. Now here, if any person is executing a sale deed for a property of, let's say, a 10-acre land which is worth 10 crore rupees, but the sale deed is showing that this sale value is only 1 crore rupees, which is 9 crores lesser than the actual value. This is what we call as a false statement of consideration. Now this section was used to mainly cover all Benami and fictitious transactions, but now we have the Benami Transactions Prohibitions Act, which helps us to better deal with Benami transactions. We have section number 323, that is the fraudulent or dishonest removal or concealment of property, which attracts an imprisonment of 3 years or fine or both. The next one is forgery. Forgery is seen under section number 366 of the BNS, wherein they are saying that if any person makes a false document or a false electronic record with what? With an intention to cause damage or injury. So there is a false document, a false electronic record with an intention to cause damage. Now this damage can happen to the public or to any person when that public or person is claiming any interest or title, if they are forced to part with property or enter into any contract with an intention to commit fraud, commits forgery. So again, let's break this down. There is a false document or a false record. It is intended to cause damage or injury to the person, whether it is a person or to the public. When that person is claiming title of it. What is title? Title means ownership of something. Okay, or when do you sign on documents? If you wish to transfer money, you can go and sign on a check and transfer it. That is parting with property of a person. Or to enter into any express or implied contract with the intention to commit fraud. Now, the punishment for forgery is up to 2 years of fine or with both. And the court went on to say that a simple alteration of a document does not make it forged. It must be for some material gain. And forgery is also an offense which requires a dishonest or a fraudulent intention.